Hey everyone, I'm Katie Sutton,
And I'm Debbie Callahan.
and we are trying something new. We have been wanting to just share information with you about what's going on in the world. I record videos every week telling you about the energies, but I'm getting bored of just talking to myself into the void. And I have invited my dear friend Debbie to join me, and we're going to be posting this on both of our channels. And it's really just a conversation about what's going on in the world, like you would have with a friend in your life, just having a real authentic conversation about navigating this human experience that we call life right now. So, Debbie, I would love to hear from you. I thought it would be good if we could just start by introducing everybody to how we met and why we're friends.
So I met Katie in North Carolina after my divorce. And at that point, I was really grasping. I didn't know at the time that I had PTSD. I think I was diagnosed after that. But therapy, traditional therapy, was just not working for me anymore. So I was exploring everything that Charlotte had to offer. There were a lot of alternative therapy. So I thought I would book a 12th dimensional healing session with Katie, not knowing what that was. And it was amazing. She's great holder of space, and we've been connected ever since.
I don't even know how long ago that was, but when I think of Debbie, I think of somebody who is very heart-centered and an amazing connector. You're an amazing space holder. You have a infinite amount of knowledge about many things, alternative and mindfulness, and you have a lot of knowledge and are a great space holder when people are moving through grief as well. As I have just so enjoyed getting to know Debbie over the years and been on her podcast, and she's been helping me to get over my fear of getting out into the world of podcasts. And we've just become friends, and we have lots of really good conversations about what's happening in the world. And so here we are. So, my first question for you, as I would ask anybody that I'm friends with, is how are you doing with everything that's going on in the world? What are
It's
you
hard.
feeling?
What am I feeling? I'm feeling like I'm having a lot of, oh, I've got this. I've got this. Okay, it's okay. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And then I just feel just this impending sense of doom almost. And then I'm like, nope, got this. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. So that's where I'm at, even with this holiday week. It's the same kind of feeling like, oh, no, it's going to be fine. And then I feel the heaviness around me. Maybe that is both me and the collective. I just feel it and sense people's grief.
Yeah. Yeah, I think as I've been chatting with clients recently, what I've been witnessing is that we're in a shift of timelines that has happened with some astrological transits and some things that are happening in the collective. And anytime we move from one state of being, one timeline to another, there's a natural excitement. Just like you were saying, I've got this. This is so good. I'm so happy about all these new beginnings that I think are happening. And then there's this undercurrent as well of things are changing and I'm grieving. And I made a post yesterday about just how I'm feeling. And what I said is when I go out into the collective, I feel like people are really angry and people are really sad and people are really fearful and some people are really excited. And that's a very interesting mishmash of emotions. Nowhere in that did I say, oh, we're calm and we're peaceful and we're in the holiday spirit.
Right.
That's not what I'm feeling in the
No,
collective.
no, not at all. And I think part of that is a normal occurrence every year.
Yeah.
People have holiday grief. The highest rate of mortality in the US is January because of all the stress that happens through the holiday season. So that's normal anyway to feel that, but I think this year is different. I personally, and I think I realize this as I'm walking through the grocery store and some people are wearing masks and some people are not wearing masks. I'm like, ooh, I think we're still moving through that, the grief of that. Like, what just happened and how did that change me? And what do I feel like when I'm in a big party now, knowing that pneumonia is going around? Am I freaking out or am I okay with it? Am I happy to be with people? I think that's also a struggle that people are feeling.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if you've noticed what I'm noticing, which is that there's a pervasive loneliness energy at play. I heard somebody talking the other day about there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. We can
Mhm.
be alone and deeply connected to self, source, earth, to our community and be okay, but we can be lonely in a crowded room. And I feel like that's part of it too. I am feeling this push, especially with this move into Aquarius, that we've got to get into community with one another and we've got to figure out how to meet across party lines and all these things that are going on politically and support one another as human to humans. And I'm feeling the pervasive need for that because everybody that I look at just feels really lonely to me. They might have some core relationships that feel good, but even in my life, I feel like all of my relationships are up in the air right now because I'm shifting. And every time I shift, I don't know who's going with me and what's going to change in my life. And so we've been in this trying to find new normal ever since the pandemic, and we don't have a new normal. Things are just changing constantly. That's part of what happens when we're moving through a mass transformation like we are in the collective. But are you feeling this loneliness that I'm experiencing in the collective as well?
Yes. And I think that also has something to do with that people don't feel understood. So they
Mm.
feel very alone in whatever they're feeling. The viewpoints, their struggles, all of it, I think they feel misunderstood by everyone around them. And that feels very lonely to people.
I think that's a really good point. I've had some clients talk to me about the election and talk to me about different choices that they've made. And maybe I'm the only person that they're being honest with about what choice they made.
Mm,
They're afraid to share that, even if they are aligned with their choice, they're afraid to share that because they don't want to create more division. And I think it's a really scary time to honor our truth in these divisive times. I think it's hard to navigate in our family situations. It's hard to navigate in all kinds of situations.
for sure. And I think because I moved, I had a big move after my divorce. I moved from New England to the South, and I originally landed in South Carolina, and that was a huge culture shock for me. And I felt that having to almost be in the closet with my own feelings and my own opinions for a long time. So I understand that. And now I think everybody's feeling,
It's really
that.
isolating to
Mhm.
not be able to be in your authentic expression. And my intention with these conversations between you and I is to have an authentic conversation about what's really going on because it's one thing for me to read the energies, but it's another thing for us to just talk about how we're feeling in the shifts that are happening in the collective. So I have a question for you because I
Okay.
know that you navigate grief a lot and you help people have held space for people in grief and have written two books. And I'm curious when the holidays come up and we've got all this stuff going on, what do you tell people in terms of how to honor the grief that they're feeling? Like, how do you help people navigate that? How have you helped them in the past?
Navigating grief in the holidays.
Yeah, or just any time where there's an expectation that we should be happy. Because I think that's part of it. It's, oh, happy holidays. We should be really excited. We should be really excited to get together with our family. But this is a really complicated time, as we just discussed. And so, how do you help people to honor wherever they're at if it is grief and they're not able to meet that happiness quotient that we're supposed to be hitting every day?
For sure. I think that people I think just accepting that it's normal to be sad. I have a friend whose brother just died suddenly in a plane crash. It was very shocking and traumatic for her. And then her dog died. And she was beside herself, as you can imagine. I think pet grief is one of the worst. And she immediately, she's like, "Oh, I've got to get it." And I was like, "Yeah, but it's normal for you to feel this. It's normal for you to be beside yourself and inconsolable and not want to get out of bed. That is so normal. Stop making it not normal." So I think that's the first thing. Just it's okay. Of course, you don't feel like getting out of bed. That's a normal human response to what you just went through. That would be the first thing that I would say to people, that it's normal. And I also have to give myself that grace this time of year. I think yesterday when I was hearing about all the pneumonia that was going around, and I started to get, oh gosh, I don't want to get sick. And oh, this winter is going to be like horrible. And I realized that that's a normal response for me because I had a very sick child that I had to try to keep healthy all winter long. She has no immune system. She was always sick. And it was just scary. And so now when I hear of something going around like that, I still have that response and I have to be compassionate with myself. Of course, you're going to be freaking out about that, even though it's not your responsibility to keep her safe, and definitely not anymore. She's an adult, but that still lives with me.
And your body still remembers. I tell people all the time, your body remembers things that happen at certain times of year. And even if it's not in your conscious awareness, it doesn't take much to trigger that memory in your body. And then the brain starts creating all the reasons why it needs to be afraid or sad or angry or whatever the emotion is that's attached with that memory.
Mhm.
And I love what you said about just making grief normal. I work with a lot of people, not even that they've lost a loved one, but they're transition. I work with a lot of people in transition of some sort. They're moving through transformation. They're letting go of one version of themselves and welcoming in a new version. And I'm going through this right now. I had some big intentions for the end of this year, about things that I wanted to shift, and just being no longer being afraid to put myself out on a bigger stage and connect with more people. But I'm grieving the small town local healer version of me right now. And I'm grieving the connections that are going to change as I broaden my reach. And it feels shameful to talk about that because I'm excited to open to this new chapter, and I'm super grateful. I'm grateful for your help and helping me to get seen by more people and get out there. But I'm also grieving these things that are changing, and honoring those two emotions at the same time is weird. It's
Mhm.
a weird thing to, when somebody's, oh, congratulations, and you want to be really excited, and you are really excited and grateful, but there's this other part of you that's grieving. I think that's a challenging thing that a lot of everybody can relate to, even if you've never lost a loved one or a pet.
Do you think that's why people tend to go overboard on the holidays a little bit sometimes, that they're trying to compensate for the grief that they're really feeling? Wait, if I go all out on Christmas, then it's going to be okay.
Yeah, I think the end of the year, especially here in the States, I witness in my more global clients have a different relationship to the holidays than we do, but they're so materialized, they're so commercialized, and there's so much expectation that comes in. And I think there's a story maybe running in our collective consciousness that says, if I can just get this holiday, or if I can just get the perfect tree, or I can just have the perfect turkey on the table, then all of this hard shit that I'm going through and that my family is going through, it'll be okay for just a moment. And
Mhm.
that to me is a beautiful intention. And I think that the heart of that intention is why we love the holidays and why they are so commercialized. But I think the problem comes when we build up to that, and that is the holy grail answer. And then somebody gets sick and can't come, or something happens and the turkey gets ruined, or whatever. There has to be a lightness that we can also pair with that so that we can navigate whatever challenges arise.
Yeah. And I also, again, that's a push-pull thing for me. My Thanksgiving is going to be very different this year, and I was so excited when I realized, and as I was walking through the grocery store, that I don't have to buy any of this stuff. I don't have to worry about any of this, and it was a huge relief.
Yeah.
And then, but at the same time, I think I should be celebrating life and the people that I'm with, and that's what Thanksgiving is supposed to be about, really, not celebrating that you have to buy all this stuff. So I have this push-pull thing with the holidays, I think.
I think a lot of us we go through transformations and transitions. And so our holidays look very different from year to year. Sometimes when we have children that are graduating, or we're getting married and we're building our own family. And I always coach people in trying to claim something within that holiday that is unique and special to them, and honoring that one tradition or that one thing, and making sure that they honor it regardless of what's happening. Because
Mm.
there's an inner child component to this too. Because I don't know if you remember when you were a kid and holidays, but some of my favorite memories of family time, like kind of the only time we really got together as a extended family, was at Christmas and at Thanksgiving. And I can tell you a million really funny, hilarious stories that were probably very traumatic for the adults. But as a kid, I remember how funny it was when my grandmother ordered a shirt for my father and she had it hemmed and altered, and his sleeves were like short sleeves instead of long sleeves. I remember that because it was so funny. Now, my poor grandmother probably was super embarrassed, but it was hilarious. And so it's being able to tap into that inner child version that doesn't go into the adult family drama that we have in holidays too can be really helpful, I think.
I think you made a good point about the holidays always changing because they do, and I think there's a grief in that because they're ever evolving always as we move through life, and there's huge grief in that. Like maybe somebody moves away or somebody passes away, so that's and things change or it's it makes it such a bittersweet time of year, really. I think that's for me personally, it's hard to deal with all the emotions, right? I have a lot of emotions around it. How about you?
I think it's the same. And what I witness is when we don't honor those emotions. I think my hardest thing is, I grew up in a family where maybe we didn't talk about emotions. And that's probably, I'm not unusual in that. And there were a lot of things that were unspoken. Oh, this person's mad at that person. And we're just going to pretend that there's no conflict going on. So, what I've been trying to cultivate in my immediate group of people that I spend time with is okay, let's just have the hard conversation. I'm not going to pretend that I'm not having a hard day and that I don't need to have a cry right now. And I think we've been so conditioned to not show our emotions. And now there's this other conditioning in the spiritual community that's okay, make sure you're regulated, nervous system regulation, emotional body regulation, that sometimes we don't just give ourselves the grace to just be human and just to have a little bit of a meltdown like we might have had when we were 2 years old. But if we can allow ourselves the grace to feel those things, then I think it becomes much easier when those around us are going through that because it increases our capacity to have compassion for that.
Mhm. And I think it's important to have the hard conversation. And for me, the hard conversation has been trying not to do anything that I would resent throughout the holidays. And that's a challenge to move through the holidays, not doing something you're going to resent. So, as a people pleaser, just saying that's it's a challenge for me. And I was just talking to a friend about this, whose daughter was making an unreasonable request. And I said, you could just tell her, hey, no, I'm going to do something else because if you do it and you resent it, that's what causes the stress in the holidays for me is doing things that I would resent. And I would hope that the people around me would be able to have the hard conversation instead of doing something they were going to resent involving me.
Yeah, because let's be real, pretty much everybody that's listening to this is probably an empath and a sensitive. And so when somebody's doing something that they resent and they're not saying anything, that's probably like the worst frequency that I ever experienced. I would much rather have the hard conversation than feel you be really uncomfortable for 2 hours and not say anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what makes the gathering stressful is all of those unspoken words and the tension that resentment causes. That would also be a piece of advice that I would give people. If you're going to resent it, don't do it. Find a nice way out of it if you have to, but just
Mm.
don't do it.
So my other question, because I've been thinking about this for myself, because I tend to this time of year go tunnel vision and try to just be like, okay, I'm just getting through this time period. And it's not necessarily just because of what's going on in my life, it's because of what I feel in the collective. And I know people are not going to be at the top of their game in desire of working on their stuff. It's not a great time for me to release a class. It's not a great time for me to be doing the work that I do in the world other than one-on-one sessions, and people are really distracted, so I try to go tunnel vision. But what I noticed last year is I went so tunnel vision that I didn't have the joy and I didn't take the time to play and I didn't take the time to have fun. And so, what do you think people should do when they're disconnected from themselves in order to try to get through a time period, whether it's the holidays or if they're just trying to get through grief and just trying to get through the day? Like, what brings them back to presence? Because I know synchronicity and presence is one of your things. And so, just thought maybe you could share something with them about that too.
First of all, I think sometimes things are so tough, all you have to do is get through it. I
Yeah.
mean, that's the truth. It's one day, it's 2 days, Thanksgiving, Christmas, but it's really, if things are that bad, just you will get through it. You will survive 24 hours of whatever it looks like.
Mm.
But also, yeah, looking for synchronicity is a good point, I think. And I always have to come back to that myself because and it's hard when things are busy and frenetic and everybody's getting sick and plans are crazy. It's hard to look for synchronicity, but I think that's always helped me and it never fails me. That's for sure. If I really open my eyes to it and look for signs and synchronicities, it really never fails. And people ask me, do you think that's a sign? Do you think that? And I'm like, of course, if you're asking me, it is. Like it absolutely.
What I find when I'm heads down is that my usual intuitive connection and awareness of just like my intuitive knowing is limited because I'm focused and I'm trying to get through whatever that thing is that I'm trying to make it through that day. And so it's the subtle signs and the synchronicities that kind of pull me out of that state of hyper focus and into a state of expanded focus and presence. And I think that is just as powerful as having the direct download, intuitive knowing of what next step to take. Because what I'm also witnessing in the collective, and this is something that maybe we can talk about in our next conversation more, is that as we're transitioning into next year, our way of manifesting and our way of creating change for ourselves as individuals is shifting, and we don't have the playbook. We don't even necessarily know what it is that we're creating. We're just going on faith and intuitive knowing about what the right next step to take is without knowing what the bigger picture is. And I think that's something that's going to continue to get more prevalent as we move into next year. So maybe we'll talk about that next time if you want.
Okay. That
Yeah.
sounds good. And I would just like to add, though, that when someone does lose someone close to them and they're in the midst of grief, that's when, even if they don't believe in signs and symptoms or anything like that, they see them and things happen. So when they're really in the midst of it, show up magically.
Yeah, I always use the example of in native traditions, when somebody was grieving, they would have circled around them because they considered that they were a portal to source in that time, that they
Mhm.
were at their most open to all of the possibilities and all of the insight that the universe has to offer. And just being in the energy of that person and holding space for that person's grief process and fostering it was a way for them to tap in as a collective and as a community. And can you imagine what it would be like if we honored it in that way? Even if it wasn't the loss of a loved one and we were just grieving something with our whole being, what I witness is it opens my heart so much when I allow that process, and I can alchemize so many things in my being when I allow to that level. So maybe one day our world will get to that level of empathy and we can reclaim some of that.
Mm.
All right, so final thoughts. Like, what is Debbie's top three things right now that are getting you through the day? And I'll share mine.
So I have to say, having some structure in my day is really helpful to me. I really helpful as things are amping up for the holiday season. It's getting up at the same time every day, going to bed at the same time every night, having routine and ritual brings comfort and a sense of safety and a sense of purpose to me. That would definitely is helping me during these days. So it's feeling good. Is that what does that count as one or many?
That's one.
Okay, okay. All
Give me
right.
two more. Give me two more that are
Okay.
that help you.
Definitely, the structure in my day. What else is getting me through? Um, Conversation with people, connect, definitely helping me. Really just taking it down to basics, honestly. I would say, am I hydrating enough? Am I eating healthy enough? If I go to a party, do I jump back into my normal routine the next day? So that just taking care of the basics, I think, connection and structure.
Okay.
How about you, Katie?
So yeah, you guys are gonna laugh at mine probably. So number one, and I keep telling this to all my clients, is I am getting rid of so many things right now. I am organizing, I am donating, I am giving things away, I am clearing the decks for new things to come in because it just feels like it's the most important thing. And we're in a Mercury retrograde cycle, so it's a great way to use that energy. And as I'm doing that, I'm also going through and rebuilding all of my altars in my house and just bringing in new energy with my ritual that I have. Number 2 is conversation and just really continuing to speak the damn thing into existence. Just keep speaking the thing that's going on in my life and keep having the conversation and not being afraid to talk about it with those that I love. And number 3 is probably moving my body. Yesterday, it looked like 45 minutes on the treadmill at a high incline reading a book and drowning everything out and going into a fantasy novel. Tomorrow, it might look like yoga. The next day, it might look like dancing in my living room, but just like keeping my body moving so that the part of me that wants to freeze and get stuck in the density and the emotion doesn't get stuck for too long, because when I'm moving, I can be in the emotional release too, and that facilitates that part of my being. And just reminding myself that there's love out there, even if sometimes things look a little hairy in the collective.
Mhm. Great point.
So I will put the information about both of our websites and how you can get in touch with us below this video. But I would love to hear from the people that are watching this. Do you like this? Do you want more of this? This is a thought experiment for Debbie and I to see if we might want to incorporate this on the regular. So let us know. Did you like the conversation? What do you want us to talk about next? Any final thoughts from you, Debbie?
Yeah, I would just like to know from other people how they're experiencing this holiday season in particular and how they're managing to get through it.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all for watching, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.